karaoke.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Science Indie Comic Boom podcast, a little indie comic action. I'm here with Rocky. What's up, Rocky?
It's another hot summer day, and I'm sweating as we're doing this review. And
Yes.
you know,
If you could do that again in a sing-song voice, then I'll just start calling you Buster Poindexter from here on out. It's not actually as hot here in the States where I am outside of Philadelphia. The problem I have is that my sewage pipe in the basement here where I record ended up cracking. So
oh
it's not the water in, it's the water and nonsense out pipe, which
yes,
is better because it didn't flood.
yeah.
It's not smelling so great down here. I'm telling you right now, it really stinks down here, and I'm getting a little dizzy, but that's fine. That is
Well,
fine. That may explain later why or why not I might have fallen asleep during one of the books, but I was actually not reading it down in the basement, so I can't blame that. But we end up having 3 books this week, and it's for the first point that we ever done. We're going to actually continue with 3 books. We actually have 3 number 2s, which again, it smells a lot like that down here. But I ended up having people on Twitter actually get a hold of me. And actually, I'd like to give a shout out to a couple people. My man Skip, that I ended up doing a podcast with or a YouTube deal with this past weekend, actually gave a shout out to me and you on the show. Said he'd been listening to it, and that made me feel good. And also,
nice.
a couple people had asked on Twitter if we were actually going to cover a couple of these books that we are tonight. So at least some people are paying attention. And going with that, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, good. As long as they can't smell the sewer on your end, and they don't have
No.
to feel the heat on mine, and hopefully they'll just hear our stellar wisdom about these
Oh,
books.
stellar wisdom. I'm telling you, you combine your heat with my stank down here, and we got some problems. But we are, as I said, we're going to continue with a bunch of these books. I'm going to start with Absolution, the AWA Upshot book by Peter Milligan, writing art by Mike Deodato Jr., colors by Lee Lowridge, and letters by Steve Wands. And we liked the first issue enough. We were a bit intrigued. We thought maybe it was a little tropey, if I remember right. But when we went and got into this for the second one, I think I'm still the same, actually. I think I like it. I want more of the world. And I said that the first time we talked about it. And I do think there's a disconnect between our main character, Nina, and the reader. You know, I'm not really in with her. I'm not really there rooting for her as much as she's going for her absolution score and actually trying to be saved through this. But still, by the end, I'm actually still into it a bit. Maybe it's just because I'm not reading anything that's quite like this in this kind of Running Man future tech, cyberpunk type deal. But I ended up at the end thinking, okay, I don't really have a connection with the main character that I wish I had after 2 issues. How do you feel about it?
Well, I kind of feel the same way as you. I find it interesting that I still find the premise interesting. That
I do too.
This idea of this criminal who basically they do something with her brain, and she's supposed to kill. She's basically in sort of a dystopian future where she gains points by a bunch of us watching her kill all these people, and she gets more views and more subs the more devious and deadly that she is. But the problem is that instead of making her more of a criminal, they actually took away her criminal her inclinations, and she's inclined to want to do good. And that's what I find so fascinating is as we're watching her do these horrible killings, she's actually reluctant. She's getting more and more reluctant to want to do these killings. And to make it even worse, some of her fans that are watching online, they need her help. Random people are asking for help. And one girl in this particular issue is suicidal. And she's not only is she losing her killer instinct to a certain extent, but she's actually finding herself wanting to almost help one of her viewers. And I find that very fascinating because this isn't a fall from grace. This is actually literally almost like
climbing towards it.
Climbing
really?
towards
like
it. Yeah. So
it's
it
is
a little twist, as you to use
it
your
is
vernacular.
A twist. It very much is. And I think Peter Milligan does a good job in this of reminding us there's not like a full recap page or anything. And when you go in, he does throw in a couple things in here that gets you back up to speed, even from that first issue. And a lot of times, I'm not saying that people should forget things from one month to the next. But when you have new characters and new things, so many, and some people read a lot of books, right? So when you get into it, you kind of start getting your bearings set. And he does a good job continuing and reminding you of that deal where she had, the bad part of her brain. She kind of seemed to have like a frontal lobotomy type deal to get rid of her anger and her, bad tendencies, like you said. But he plays it out not just by saying it, he plays it out that she's disturbed because she does remember the stuff from before. And that's where I think it's kind of a play there, a twist, even, if you will. The idea that she knows what she's doing right now isn't quite what she used to be. She ends up going into rooms where she says, I would normally have killed everybody in this room, but now I feel bad for that person. And I don't pull. And at one point, the big play is, I'm more normal now. She like the idea of her new normal where she realizes, yeah, I was kind of messed up before. So it's weird because I don't get that deal in here where, and maybe the surgery, whatever it does, doesn't allow you to be. She doesn't feel like she's that angry of the fact that she's changed that way. She almost seems like you said, like climbing towards this new her and being better. But in there, it is messing her up. I mean, she realizes normally I'd be able to do this, do all. So what happens with this absolution score, though, is she has to keep it up and people aren't liking what she's doing. We saw that before. Everything she does, they're ending up in even commentary on TV. Stuff like, well, that was kind of a generic play. Anybody could have done that. And she sets up this idea. And I think that Peter Milligan's playing with this deal of normally in a book like this, you'd be rah-rahing a ex-assassin that goes back for revenge against the clan that ended up making her and ruining her as a kid. And in this, though, it's like, yeah, been there, done that. We've seen that. And I think that that's kind of the funny play. It almost pokes fun at the genre, even movies and stuff like that, of the revenge and of the things, at least in this one issue. And I thought that was pretty clever the way it goes because she is desperately trying to get her score. And you see, like, it's funny, you see the fickleness of everybody. Her score goes skyrocketing until the bad guy almost gets away at the end. And then, oh, man, you let him go. And the score plummets. And then it goes up again because she thought stuff. But we even get rules as well. We also, I mean, really, the play here is also the idea that people are awful. I mean, they're
Yeah.
if we're here in this world, we're watching and rooting for this girl to kill people, but then it gets so bad, you're so desensitized to this that you're actually nitpicking the way she does it. I mean, that is
Yeah.
awful, but it plays in, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that was, she's damned if she does, and she's damned if
Yeah,
she doesn't, because even when she begins to win, the hosts of the show that are broadcasting her adventures, essentially, they turn on her. Just when she
yeah.
gets a high score, they find a reason to try to pull her back down. They criticize her when she does well, and when she does bad, they'll try to prop her up a bit. So it's like a yo-yo for her,
Yeah,
and I actually thought she was quite sexy. I mean, she even tried to provocatively, like,
yeah.
do a little bit of a
I
strip
mean,
tease
that
for one
guy
of the guys,
really
bad
has an
guys
issue. I
there.
mean, she says that guy, like, he has a problem. I mean, he has a problem. A woman comes in rootin', tootin', shooting, and all she has to do is pretend that she might take off her shirt, and the guy's mesmerized. I mean, he has a big problem, right?
Him,
But
I was
that's cool.
mesmerized. What do you mean?
Yeah, really. Now, what I like the idea and also the play is you have to deal with, and she's kind of the fun thing is it seems she's new to this absolution,
Hmm.
and she doesn't quite get the way it plays out either. She thinks that if I just go and kill everybody and it's big, she doesn't quite get what she needs to go. And one of the things that did shock me here, and I didn't even think about it last issue, was the idea that when she goes through this, that's fun and games, right? They end up, oh man, I love what she did. But when you go to the after show, which plays off like a lot of those shows that they used to have, like the Survivor after show and all this, where all of a sudden now you have experts that certain people then are suddenly swayed. You could watch the show and think, oh man, that guy's Rocky's the greatest on the show. But then when you get that after show and they start twisting the things of like, well, Rocky did seem good, but what he did here was this and this. And when they end up pointing out that the people that she killed, which are awful criminals, it seems, that, oh man, that person had a mental problem. That person ended up getting abducted as a kid. All of a sudden her score starts going down. And you do have that play where it looks like they could fix things. I mean, you have people, if the ratings aren't good or whatnot, you can get the idea, like a Running Man, that they can just play it a different way. Hey, everybody, you say this and that and the other thing, and we'll get her scored down. And I thought that was a bit intriguing as well, to open up this world of the game and things like that. But I still have a disconnect with Nina, just because she's just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that she's an assassin in a Running Man type game that I can't really, put myself into, but it doesn't seem like she's a fleshed out, like, real character yet. You're getting a lot of
Yeah.
her just killing a lot of reactions,
Well,
and
I
I
get a sense
need
though that
more.
they're gonna build
Yeah,
that up because
yeah.
she's such a mystery. We're only at the end of issue 2. I'm still intrigued, and I think we're gonna get a lot more secrets about Nina, because we know that she was more of a criminal in her past life. I
Mhm.
think I think more of that's gonna come into play in future issues. I don't know that, but I think that I mean I hope I'm not giving Peter Milligan too much credit here, uh, but there's so much potential for this character because all I know is this: when I watch The Bachelor and Big Brother and crap
Yeah,
like that, I mean, there's some really bad shows, but I love watching those shows because I hate them so much because I love ripping the people apart and, and
exactly.
and pretending I'm not as stupid as they are. And so this is kind of like that, except we're dealing with killers and guns and what have you. So
Yeah,
there is some overlap there, and you can I if I had one minor gripe. I wish Milligan. I wish there was a little bit more comedy in this.
yeah.
It's all killing. I would like to see a little bit more humor because when they're playing with these, and I would like to see more overlap with other assassins as well. And
That's
played a
true
little bit.
too.
He's played a little bit with that, but there's a lot of potential here in this world of Absolution. And we're only 2 issues in, so and the art's fantastic. And we got to
Yeah, I
give Mike
really do
Deodato
like the art.
Jr. Got to give him some credit here. This is really good. That absolutely pulls me in. In the hands of a lesser artist, I might have been out by now, but this keeps me intrigued.
Yeah, I like the art a lot, and I agree with you with the humor part. It's funny because I think that he might think that the online comments are more funny than I think. And in my mind, when they do the comments, like, he may think that's the humor, but in my mind, that actually stresses the idea of this awful world where these things are going on. You have a guy like, "Come on, baby, take off your shirt. I'll give you a better score than that." That felt more like less as comedy or more like a social deal of, "Oh my god, this place is gone," because legitimately, like you said, you watch The Bachelor or this Big Brother as guilty pleasures. In this later on, this rundown world, whatnot, that's what they're watching. They're watching actually assassinations things. Now, again, I told you that if I was in this world, and I want to know why this doesn't happen, if I end up finding out, oh my God, hey, do you see boss Nina? She's on the show Absolutions. I'd be like, okay, somebody is in charge of watching that show 24/7. Make sure she's not coming for me because I know I might have a target on me because, again, she was part of that clan, part of that cartel. And somehow she got taken. Maybe she was set up. We don't know. That's the kind of thing that I want to see. How did she get from point A to point B, get arrested, end up having this maybe lobotomy type deal, or at least having some sort of surgery to get rid of her impulses? Now, I say all that. I wonder if when we find out if she has that opportunity to get that back or whatnot, if that's possible. We talked about it in the first issue because in this, like I said, she's not rebelling or fighting against the idea that she has more of a conscience or acting normal, but she doesn't quite celebrate it either. It just ends up in the moment. Oh, I paused for a second. The big play here is when she's going to shoot a guy and she says, I paused for a second, not because I'm slow, because I'm normal. Normal people don't kill other people, but it's an assassin telling us that, somebody in this thing. So that's intriguing. And then that actually makes the guy, grab another woman. And then she says again, I normally shoot both these people. I don't care. What do I care about them? And then but I'm not. I do this, and then uses her feminine wiles to try to. And I mean, I'm telling you, this guy, he has a problem. Well, he has a lot of problems now, or maybe none. But in the background, like you said, you have this Magica, this girl Stevie, who's a massage person, and this big guy. You don't even get really the concept, except rich guy who gets everything he wants and wants her to, do a little happy ending deal that she says she doesn't. He says, well, if you want a job, you do.
Yeah.
And she starts getting very upset about this and goes on to this. And that's another weird kind of twist there of the idea. If you do have a problem, and you end up, you're not gonna call Ghostbusters, you're gonna call maybe somebody in this Absolution. I mean, that would be something that you could do, almost like a backhanded way or backdoor way of hiring an assassin, because if it ends up being something that would up the ante. Now, I think that we're gonna find out that this guy is kind of in charge of some things, and they're gonna say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa," almost like you'll get the executives in, the producers of this show, quote unquote.
Yeah.
"No, no, no, you can't go after that." And she's gonna have to decide, do I want an absolution and live, or do I need to do the right thing and maybe go after this guy? Because she even skirts with it. And at one point, I was so worried that that girl was desperately sending messages in this, and she was gonna ignore it, and then by the end, it was just gonna be a side note that this girl ended up offing herself, and I was really worried about it.
Yeah.
And, luckily, that didn't happen. It just would've given me a bad feeling in the
That
whole deal, but
that is one of the mysteries, though. I'm a little bit unclear how this girl who is
yeah.
wants to kill herself. I'm not sure how she's communicating with her. Like why? Because I would have thought, why has she been able to communicate with her and not everyone else who's watching? Like
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
some of
really.
them are, it seems, but you would think there's a filter or I don't know, because I think that that's maybe a thing that Milligan has to, like, really spell out more.
Yeah.
And I mean, and again, he plays off the idea during that you have these pop-up ads or something. It's kind of it's clever enough the way that they end up doing it. It's almost like triggered by something in the, murdering and the assassination. Like, hey, if you want this, hey, when they have a mention of drugs in this hexamphetamine type thing. But even then, he does a good job of just throwing in terms and words that are intriguing in this sort of fiction that I do want to see a little more of. But you even see her, and one of the other big things is they have a timeout that they can do, but they only can do it for a certain amount of time where all of the, cameras and stuff go out and you can
Yeah.
do whatever. And she uses it to good effect here. She ends up actually it's funny because she uses a good effect because at the end she's going through this cartel. But even then, did you feel like this whole thing of her going after her ex card, it was too quick? It ended up like, that's something that seems like it'd be a little deeper, and maybe they're playing with that, but the idea that she's like, "Well, you know what? I think for some points, I'll go after these old bad guys
Well,
that I know," and then it's just done. By the end, I'm like, "Yeah, that was very
Well, you
rushed."
know what's interesting though is it seemed to me the impression I'm getting is that she literally has carte blanche. She can go after anybody she wants,
Mhm.
other than I'm assuming the game show hosts that are
Yeah, yeah,
hosting
yeah.
this. But I mean, she could literally take out anybody. And what I find interesting is that I mean, it's she lives in a world. This is apparently a universe where she can kill anybody and get away with it.
Yeah,
And
it's
pretty much
weird,
has
right?
to, because as long as she gets high ratings or a lot of subs on her channel or whatever it might be, she's perfectly fine. And it should be noted that this might have some vibes of Suicide Squad in a sense.
Mhm.
And this game show is actually like the glorified computer version of Amanda Waller, but
Yeah.
she doesn't have a bomb in her head. Nina Ryan, they go into quite graphic detail at the beginning. One of the doctors that operated on her goes into graphic detail what will happen if she doesn't come back after the timeout, or if she tries to escape or what
Yeah.
have you. I mean, she'll have the equivalent of multiple seizures, and she'll have a very long, slow, and painful death.
Yeah,
So it's
it's
not a quick
not
bomb,
nice.
and
Yeah.
so I
And
mean,
it's
it's yeah.
funny because, yeah, Peter Milligan saying, I thought, again, that's a cool way to do it to make it more oomph like, because
Uh,
she got, I got to do this because this bomb in my head. But then when they explain it, it's not like, because they even say it's supposed to be, hey, everybody out there in viewing land, remember, if this happens at the end, you're not going to get a great explosion that you're going to really like. It's going to be an awful thing. And it's almost like, come on now, stop wishing that at points you have people that are typing in, why don't you go just die, kill yourself, you're worthless and whatnot. So there isn't like a lot of love in this book. And I think that maybe it's weird. Like it is a dark humor, but I do agree there's not really anything lighthearted. You have to get a little bit of that. You have to lighten the mood a tiny bit here. And he may want to do that at one point, because it might get to the point that you're just like, this is too much. Like I can't just take this each issue of just balls to the wall, killing, killing, killing. And I don't know, because is he playing with the idea that he wants to desensitize us, like the people in that? Like again, this is the problem, and you said it earlier. When you review comics like this or anything, you don't want to give credit, like that much credit, thinking that you are in tune with them, because that might not be the case. But I'm hoping that there is something here where it's not just over the top killing, killing, killing all the time, and that he isn't gonna make it a little bit, at a point where it is a little bit, at least a little tiny bit lighthearted. But I don't know. Other than that, though, I'm still kind of intrigued. And you do see that girl at the end too, where again she's given another massage. And the way they play it, Peter Milligan doesn't go full out over the top. You know what's going on, but it's basically going, "Why don't you take off your shirt and show me the goods?" And at the beginning, and she's like, "No, I'm not that sort of person. I don't know what you heard. I don't care what I heard. I got the money. You want a job?" And we don't even know why. Like you could find out that she has two kids at home and that her husband left her, or got killed, or what. We don't really know what's going on, but it's bad to see a rich guy demand that sort of thing, and you're like, "Okay, I get it." She, even if it ended up being whatever, she would still want this guy dead, so she's trying to get this assassin deal, but, like I said, I think that this guy's gonna have too much money, too much control, too many influence things that if you do have Nina go after it, it'll be shut down, and she's gonna have to decide whether or not she's gonna go against that, and that could be how she could end up dead, but with all that, what do you think?
Well, you know what? I'm still intrigued by it. I still yeah, it's I'm sort of flatlined. It was
Yeah,
it's not substantially better than the first, but I have so I'm still where I'm at in the first issue. Honestly, I can't even remember what I gave the first issue,
I don't
but
remember either.
this one it doesn't matter. This one feels like a solid 7 to me, and I'll
Yeah,
leave it at that.
I'm telling you, I think that we may have given the first one sevens, and maybe
Yeah.
even a 6.5, saying that because I'm with you. I feel the same way. I didn't read this thinking, "Oh my god, this is so much better." I actually read it thinking, "Okay, this is about the same," but I'm still into it. It's just that that is diminishing returns. You can't keep coming back to a book saying, "Well, I wanted it to be a little better. It's not, but maybe it will be, or maybe this." And we're already starting to say things like, "We want this," or "Maybe you'll get that." And that's like kind of the light bulb that goes off of, yeah, we're not really digging everything in it and want more from it, and hopefully we'll get it. So, yeah, I'm a 7 though. It's a solid 7. The art's great. The art
Yeah,
looks
it
really
is.
good, and you have to give the credit when there's books that have art. I'll say like a Mike Perkins On the Swamp Thing book right now by Ram V. Whether or not you like the book, the art fits that book so well. This art fits this book and this whole genre. It fits it so well that you end up it even elevates what is already great art. I think it's really good. But we'll move on to the next one. And
Yeah.
I'm actually interested to hear what you say about this one as well, because there's something wrong with Patrick Todd. I will always want to say Jason Todd every time I see it, but it's issue number 2, Most Wanted, written by Ed Brisson, art by Gavin Guidry, colors by Chris O'Halloran, and letters by Hassan Atsame El Hua. And it's not Ron Guidry, it's Gavin Guidry. I just wanted to tell all those Yankee fans out there. But you end up with this, and you continue on. It actually took me a second to kind of get my bearings of what had happened and what was going on in the last issue. I actually forgot that our man, Patrick Todd, had been robbed. Then I realized what it was, and then I was, going forward with it. But it does end up really going forward in a way that I think is still intriguing, but I don't know. Some of the mystery that I was intrigued with lessens a little, and it doesn't because we find out anything. It's just that we're really going to center on his dad that we don't know, and there's the other mystery. And I think things are starting to pile up a little bit here, even when we kind of hang with some douchebags who like to, they robbed him, have all this money, and don't even think of maybe putting some of it somewhere else, not keeping it in a duffel bag in their backpack. But what did you think?
Uh, I, you know what? The biggest thing that threw me off the first issue was this strange, crazy, psychotic killer at the
Yeah.
end of it who was chopping off heads. I mean, this I thought this was going to be just a story about some kid who had mental manipulation powers and was using it to help other people rob banks for him so he could
Yeah.
help his mother who was in it, who he probably mentally manipulated accidentally when he was a child, and he was trying to redeem himself with his mother by engaging in some wrongdoing, having other people do some wrongdoing, rob banks so he can get money to help his mom.
Hmm.
But it ended last issue with some psychotic guy chopping off heads and then Patrick Todd being robbed. And so I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? And so that's really what intrigued me. And I think both you and I were very intrigued by issue
Yeah.
one particularly because of that curveball in
It
terms of
was
how it
crazy.
ended. And so, but this one, what I like here, another curveball, and I, is this psychotic guy apparently is his father. Is
Yeah.
Patrick Todd's father. Spoiler alert. I mean, obviously we're talking spoilers here.
Yeah.
And it's really shocking. And this and he goes around putting up missing posters, and Patrick Todd actually finds a poster of himself saying missing, looking for my son, $100,000 reward for my son is missing. His name's Patrick Todd. And it's this psychotic crazy guy who's got tinfoil for on his wearing tinfoil on
Oh
his
my
head.
god,
And
yeah, that hat, helmet, whatever the hell it is, it's so crazy.
yeah, no, meanwhile, the investigation, the detective continues to look for Patrick Todd. The individuals that robbed Patrick Todd in his hotel room last issue, they end up going to a bar and getting drunk and getting in a bar fight and arrested by cops, and the cops find the $27,000 cash, which is marked,
Yeah.
a bank marked money. So they know that the money, they know that these punks in the bar never robbed the banks, but they want to know where they got the money. And so now the cops know where Patrick Todd is. And so apparently does this psychotic person who is apparently his father. And that's kind of how the issue sort of ends. So
Yeah.
this plot really thickens, and the art here is really good, just as good as it was in the first
Yeah, I
issue.
like the art.
And I'm still in this because I'm curious as hell. I'm still curious. How did he get his powers? Did he get them genetically from his dad? Because why does his dad look so crazy? Why is his dad chopping off heads of all things? I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of questions here, but damned if I'm not really still
Well, and
intrigued.
that's the funny play. You have the dad, and that does end up in just as crazy luck because all we see it, he chops off heads. I mean, that is what we see. That's what the detective sees, and even the detective seeing this and seeing, okay, they're searching for somebody. They have these things, the bank robberies, all these things going on, but yet he still throws up because they're beheading people and whatnot. So the dad has not shown any sort of superpowers, any sort of anything but chopping off heads. But yet, because of his look and the idea that he seems so crazy, you start thinking, well, okay, did he pass on something to Patrick Todd? Even though we don't, because that seems very much likely in the thing, kind of. But then you have the mom. So, and Patrick Todd ends up going to her. She does seem, and he says, be lucid for a little, be coherent. And she kind of looks at where he found this wanted sign, and she looks at it, and then he says, is this my dad? Do I have a dad? So he has no idea about it. So that's crazy too. And then I start thinking of the idea of maybe he didn't would ya his mom. Maybe his mom's the one with these powers and ended up doing something wacky to him and herself because of when we don't know when the dad would have left or whatever, but we also don't know why the dad wants him. And just because the guy's beheading people, you kind of suspect that he's not exactly on the up and up. But who knows of this? He may end up in an awful way be the thing that Patrick Todd needs right now. I don't know. There are intriguing things, like you said, but you have a big part of this deal, and I don't know, it is kind of funny, and we just talked about Absolution saying it needs some humor or whatever, but these schmucks who end up robbing Patrick Todd, just the idea, it gives me that the guy who worked at the hotel, the motel where Patrick that was like the end, "Hey, this kid's here, I think he has some money," but his 2 friends are the worst, and, everybody has those bad friends where they get this money, you
Yep.
wanna lay low. So you're like but then they go to a bar and these guys, "Drinks on everyone again, everybody, we're buying," and like, "Come on now, let's lay low. I gotta get to work." Like, they're all like, "This is the greatest score ever. We're set for life," when it's not that much money.
Yeah.
But he's like, "I gotta get to work, and your cousin, this thing, can I have the money, part of mine?" And like, "No, no, screw you, man. We're not gonna go." And then they start a fight where they would never have been caught. There's no way they would have been caught. But they start a fight and they find the marked bills. And this is kind of the really bad coincidence of this because the people who robbed the banks, they were mind controlled by Patrick Todd. So they go and do that. They then confess, oh my God, aliens. They don't know why. They think they were drugged. But no way in hell is a cop going to think, well, somebody has mind control powers. So when they find these 3 guys with the money, they just think, oh, you drugged all these people, made them do it. And we didn't do anything. Like the guy is so upset. Like, how did I get into this crazy nonsense that I got into with this? But it also sets in motion. Like it's neat the pieces that's set in motion because these guys stealing the money then makes Patrick Todd need a computer. He's big on the computer. He
Uh,
doesn't have any of the money. He was going to give that money for his mom to for her care. And so he doesn't have that. So he has to actually mind control somebody that he doesn't normally do, somebody who's completely innocent. And he seems to be very taken aback by that. He apologizes to his mom, but that's the only way he found that wanted sign. That
uh,
is when he gets caught up in the cops who, I don't know, this security guy who's not even a cop. That guy is not Paul Blart. This guy is on the money. I mean,
yeah,
this guy from across the
yeah, he
way
must
in a
have super
mall.
hearing or something.
Holy moly, he sees that something is going on
Uh,
so far away in the mall. He's like calling the cops. I'm like, this guy needs to be in the CIA, FBI, or something. But I like the idea. And here's the humor where you can have humor in it. And then Brisson actually does a good job because this security officer comes and he grabs Patrick Todd, and Patrick Todd says, and you see the would you going in the word bubble goes, get your hands off me. Okay, that will be one. And go fuck yourself. And that makes this guy go, okay, I'll go do that. And all you're like is like, what is he gonna do? I mean, is it as simple as something, or is he really gonna have some problems here?
I,
And this guy just runs off. And then in what I thought a kind of a neat little deal, he ends up walking through a crowd. It almost feels like it's like separating the sea here as he's
yeah.
walking through these people as if he is something more than them. And I'm going, but he seems he seems okay enough. Like he's doing bad things, and I'm telling you, that guy is so happy to run off and go do what he's told. I'm looking at him now. Uh, but with that, he is trying to help his mom, but we don't know everything about it. Like you said, if we find out that he ended up maybe in a panic, maybe in a fit of anger. I mean, a kid who has mind control powers or whatever, kids kind of, get mad at some points. Like, hey, go to your room. "Oh, I'm not going to go to my room. Who knows? But if we find out that it's really a sus thing that happened, that he hurt his mom, and we'll feel bad for that, but he might be a little less
And
sympathetic. But
we
this
should. I think we should keep in mind one very real possibility is we already saw what this kid's capable of making that cop literally go and screw himself.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, maybe his dad is as screwed up as he is because
Yeah.
of Patrick Todd. Maybe
Yeah,
Patrick
that might
Todd
be true.
created a psychotic dad who's cutting off heads. I
Yeah,
mean,
and in that, I mean, here's the weird play too. I mean, how many things could go? He says he doesn't know. Could this be my dad? Whatever. And I keep thinking, well, maybe the mom never told him. Maybe you never met him. But there could be even the place where there's Patrick Todd, right? Hey, I only go and I mind control bad people. I do that because they and basically what they do, and they spell it out again in a good way. When these people get arrested for bank robbery, they really are then going to get arrested for what they got away with as well. So he is almost like it's a citizen's arrest with an asterisk. I'm going to
yeah.
get you to rob. I need money. So, but you're bad. I'm taking you off. That ends up. Is there a possibility that he's not as good as he says he is or thinks he is because he's even mind wiped himself of things that he's done bad? Like you said, what happened if he did do something to his dad? It seems like he doesn't know his dad or even that he had a dad,
Yeah.
but maybe that's something. I mean, there
Maybe he
are
did
some
something to
layers.
himself. Maybe he
That's
mind
what I'm
wiped
saying.
himself
Maybe
or
he
something.
mind wipes himself. Maybe he has done some bad things and he's mind wiped. Maybe he finds out. I mean, it'd be crazy if we go with like your theory that he did something to his mom's mind. Maybe he doesn't even know it. Maybe he wiped that out. There's a lot of things that go on here that are intriguing in a book that you kind of I said I compared it to Death Note the first time that we read it. And then Death Note, one of the big things is there's really nobody to root for. And so you kind of start rooting for little things and stuff like that. And maybe that guy should be caught, but this guy. But right now, I'm not rooting for Patrick Todd, but I'm scared for him because of that dad is just wacky. I mean, you start beheading people, there's problems. But I also feel bad for his mother, but I don't quite get it. The way Ed Brisson's writing it, it doesn't feel as sympathetic as you should have it. It seems very cold. It seems very like he goes there and she just sits there. It's not like you see her crying that she can hear, but she's in a like it's a weird play. It really is by the end that you don't know who to root for, but you are worried because that dad, like, what is that thing on his head? I mean, it's crazy as he
Maybe it
comes.
protects him from his own son.
And
Maybe it,
maybe that's it because it is a metal type ring and it has these, maybe that's it. And maybe now he's finally gotten the gumption to go get him to say, and even then, maybe well, I mean, if it is that Patrick Todd did something bad to him, but he wants to forgive him and help him because he realizes he's just a kid. I don't know. It's very odd the way it goes, but this guy, he also ends up talking, and his word bubble does change at one point very oddly. But he also is like a guy who doesn't seem to be able to put like kind of full sentences together at points. Like he seems like he was messed up. I mean, like really bad. So we'll have to see. These poor people will run into that guy though. Like this lady who ends up calling him about, yeah, your son, he was here. I mean, she does play off as a little bit of a scumbag, like, but again, if you see a reward, you know, but that lady just gets a hatchet or that knife right in her head. It's awful. But
Yeah.
like you said, I do like the art. I do like the way that the expressions are. I kind of did get a laugh at that one, but again, a piece of crap guy who works at that motel where they bring him in, and it almost plays off like a My Cousin Vinny, like I murdered the clerk. Like all of a sudden, this guy thinks he's in trouble for a fight, but no, they found the money, and the money happens to be bank robbery money. And oh my god, guy starts cursing it up and whatnot. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I like to. I mean, it is a funny play where he curses. Come on, now watch the language. He curses again later. Oh, sorry about that. I kind of like when they do that, but we do end. I mean, crazy. We do end with that flyer that you ended up having, Patrick Todd. He calls his dad. He calls it up and he's like, yeah, who the hell are you and why are you looking for me? And that's the play here, too. This guy recognizes him, maybe. I mean, he could go by what was just said, but he kind of does like Patrick. Hey, thanks for calling. I can't wait to finally meet you. There's so much I want to show you. Like as he's like there with this big machete. Like, oh no. And
Yeah.
even then, like he has this like parka on. He is not a now I'll tell you one thing. If you go to the beginning where you see like the credits page and you see the silhouette of this guy, it makes for a hell of a silhouette for that first page. It looks really cool. Like
Yeah,
you're like,
it does.
holy crap. But overall, here's the thing again, I actually like this more talking to you about it.
Yeah.
No, I talked a lot myself,
Yeah.
but
No.
I convinced myself I it. But no, talking about it, when I first read it, I kinda had that same feeling with Absolution, where I was like, "Well, same thing. We get these guys with the robbery money and things like that." But now that we're talking about it, kinda coming up with theories, because this book again, we actually said it already. We don't wanna give credit, but in a book that has a mystery like this, you can't help it. You can't help but
Yeah.
try to figure out some things. But what did you think of it?
I like this, equal to the first again, and I really
Mhm,
like the first. This actually builds up the hype even more. I'm even more intrigued, and I like the fact that this Patrick Todd himself, he's starting to show a little bit more of his flaws, which I kind of like, and
mhm.
I got a sneaking suspicion that this kid, I mean, it's in the title for God's sakes. There's something
Yeah.
wrong with this kid, and I'm really interested to knowing exactly how much more wrong is with him, and so I'm at a solid 8.5. I can't remember what I gave the first one, but I'm
I'm
at
an eight
eight
and
and
a
a half.
half as well. I
Yeah,
think we were around there. Now, even the play too is you have this deal going, and the dad's in town with a few days to thrill here, right? He puts up a deal. He's probably never going to pay this money anyway. He's just gonna. But boy, he puts $100,000 as the reward for info. Holy moly! Like if it was legit, because I do not think that he's ever going to pay a dime of that. He's going to
yeah.
behead you when he gets the information to move on. But boy, that's crazy. The idea that he's like, even if I said like, what the heck is going on? Well, this guy really wants to find his son or whatnot. But yeah, you end up and it's crazy. It is crazy. But the dad, there's got to be more to it than just the dad rolls into town, beheads people, and is going to attack Patrick. And even in that, with that, he's looking for Patrick, never mentions or says anything about, yeah, I want to find my wife. I want to find his mother or anything. It's just he's concerned with Patrick, and we got to find out why. There has to be a twist. There
Well, he
has to
says
be a
he
twist
says
then.
to his son at the end, he says, "I want to show you something."
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
not tell you something, I
No,
wanna show you
show
something. Well,
you.
what is he gonna show him the heads or like I mean,
Machete. And I mean, well, legitimately, when you look at the next issue's cover, it's the bloody machete with Patrick Todd's reflection in it. But I think there's got to be a twist.
yeah.
And if there isn't, we'll have to see how it plays out, but if there isn't, I'll be like, "Whoa, like, really? That's the crazy deal." Now, I do wanna point out something that I do like, them to do in the deal is you have some tweets in the back instead of a letters page or whatever, you have some tweets that were sent to them and stuff like that, and I thought that that's kind of a pretty cool idea, get things I said one of my big plays, and some of the companies do it, is if you have a book like, here's the book's there's something wrong with Patrick Todd. I ended up tweeting out when I put this up as a podcast. It's a heck of a long tweet, a hashtag there. I like when at the beginning of books they give you this like, "Hey, here's the official hashtag of this." And that is something that I think is what most books, and I said I wish DC would do it as well. So that's pretty cool. And it is the Patrick Todd comment, the official hashtag. So that's kind of a cool deal with that. Just wanted to point it out. But we'll go to the last book, and I'm going to lean on you heavy. I talked a lot already. I had some problems. And again, the problems, it's one of those, if this is a relationship and me and Starhenge have been dating, I don't know if I can't say that it's more me than them because I like this first issue of Starhenge a lot. A lot more. Actually, we surprised some people I saw that we liked it as much as we did. We kind of pumped each other up on it and got very intrigued. When we get into this, I started out and I'm like, within 4 pages, I fell asleep, and I'm tired right now, I'll admit it, I am exhausted, but falling asleep while reading a comic, that's not great, so then when I got up, I started reading again. You tried to get a hold of me, like,
Yeah.
"Where the hell is he?" And I'm like,
It's
"Oh, what's going on?" I'm like, I felt like I was drunk, and then I went and I said, "Just give me a bit more, I'll finish this." I'm on page 14. I got to, like, page 17, and I thought, "I hope Rocky really understands this because I am struggling big time in a book that I, again, recognize as being a quality thing. It's just maybe not for me. It may be, and you'll talk more and most about this. Me and you having some Liam Sharpe history, especially at the stuff at DC, like the Brave and the Bold book he did with the Wonder Woman, you're starting to see, and you said to me that you, in fact, are starting to see some of the old trends that worry you that maybe the storytelling needs a little hand here, but it is written, drawn, and lettered by Liam Sharpe. You end up having, some pages that have some different lettering and stuff. This is a visually stunning book, and it has a lot of different looks and feels throughout. But again, I don't know that that serves, me personally that well. But you go with this and give us your
well,
your deal.
well. The first thing I should say is where Liam Sharpe struggles a bit here is that the narrative it's disjointed here,
Yeah.
and it starts off. In actual fact, it's funny on the for those watching on YouTube, those listening on the podcast. Just to
Hmm.
explain, I can actually change the I control the pages. If I
Yeah.
was to, if people was to read this on YouTube, I would actually change the order of the pages
Hmm.
and make this read better because he breaks it up in such a way that I think actually impairs the narrative a little bit. I actually skip page. I you know the best part of this comic is explaining just the history because just a quick flashback. Basically, in the future, there's a war between humanity and some creatures called the Cast in another part of the universe, and they're science based, they're AI, and it took humanity's remnants of magic to defeat them, and these alien creatures went back into Earth's time, Earth's past, and destroyed magic. And therefore, in the future, we couldn't defeat these creatures with magic because we never had it. And so, in the future, the Queen in the future sent her son Merlin back into 5th century England to create Stonehenge. And what this issue really does is it explains, albeit in somewhat of a disjointed way, what
Hmm.
Merlin does by going back, how he creates Stonehenge, but he calls it the Starhenge. And all these the stones of Stonehenge are magical stones, which are actually created as seemingly as a landmark, symbolizing this great battle that took place between Prince Aurelius and defeating King Vortigern, and and on this battlefield, this is where Stonehenge, or what they call Starhenge, was created. And Merlin, although this seems like a symbol to this great battle that resulted in this Prince Aurelius defeating his enemy, King Vortigern, this actually is the origin of Starhenge, or what we know as Stonehenge
Mhm.
in modern day, I guess, Ireland or whatever. And there's beautiful maps here. It's beautiful art showing the story. But in the midst of all this, so all that, I think I found that intriguing. In the midst of
Mhm.
all this, what starts the issue off is all of a sudden Daryl, and Daryl we think is maybe a reincarnation of, we're not sure, maybe Lancelot
Yeah,
or
yeah, we
something.
talked
And
about that the
he,
first issue, yep.
yeah, you and I joked last issue because his girlfriend Amber, who is this modern day witch, she's they're like lovers, and she's
Mhm.
from Sussex, and she goes back to England, and she wants him to visit him. She wants her boyfriend Daryl to visit her in Sussex, but he was supposed to visit her over Halloween, but didn't. And in this case, he finally decides to surprise visit her on Halloween, and this issue opens up with him meeting her, but she's kissing another girl and she's kind
Yeah,
of cheating on him. And it was such a jarring way to start this issue off
yeah,
because it threw me. And then the art, there's a huge artistic change. There's a
yeah,
jarring artistic change which shows where Liam Sharpe suddenly he deviates substantially from his usual artistic style, almost in on a cartoony style, telling the origins and the family life history of Amber, who we believe is going to, we don't know, she might grow up to be, I'm not sure, a Guinevere, a witch, or we don't know what
yeah.
character of our story in honor she
Morgana,
is.
yeah, it's tough to say.
Yeah,
And yeah, and it changes even to the idea of a scribbled kind of, scrapbook deal on pencil paper
yeah,
and even things in the things and it threw me out. I mean, and that's part of the thing. It looks great. But it's very, like we said, diverse, and like you said, if you end up piecing it together in a way that goes forward, there's a cool story here. It's you're in the second issue. Even I think the first issue, you really have to dig and really reread to get the story. In this, you almost feel like Liam Sharpe is fighting against you to get some of the story where he just wants to be like, "Hey, look at this. Let's have some fun with that. Let me do this art style." To almost like as a it's like an art expo, which it was before, but this seems different. This seems when you hit that cartoony deal, it threw off what is a very dark and ominous book, especially when when you get that, I like this idea where Daryl says, "Well, you told me to come on Halloween." She goes like, "Yeah, last Halloween. Like you skipped it. Like where like I want to know what happened with them."
yeah,
And yet you're stopping for this little pit
yeah,
stop with, "Hey, here's the family deal." And then she looks
yeah.
like she had a nice family life until things went horrifically wrong, but it's setting up a mystery, but it's setting it up in a way that feels a little bit goofy, and it does break the fourth wall in parts of this too, which
Yeah.
is not something that I like, especially in a book like this. I think that this is something that you really need to concentrate on. You really need to get to it, and then you start breaking that. But you go on with that
Right.
because yeah, then you have history lessons thrown in. You end up
Oh,
having a lot of art changes as well.
yeah, because I do have a lot to compliment here because once it gets into his the Liam Sharpe classic art that we know and love,
Yeah.
and he tells the story of Prince Aurelius and defeating King Vortigern, and I have to look at my paper to pronounce this right, make sure I get these names right. But
Yes.
there's a lot here. He calls it Hibernia instead of Ireland, and these map. It's absolutely gorgeous, and even in the more cartoony, maybe jarring artistic change that talks about Amber's history, we are told that her parents died mysteriously,
Yeah.
and it's suggested or implied that maybe that her parents were murdered. And if this Amber is a person of some significance, some reincarnation of Arthurian lore, which character is Amber? Is she gonna
Yeah.
is she gonna be a good guy or a bad
Or
guy or a
bad. Yeah.
witch? We don't know. Who are her parents? Who was it the cast, the evil aliens from the future coming back that killed her parents, trying to kill her, sort of like a Terminator type thing?
Yeah.
All these things that are going through my head. So I love the questions that I'm asking as I'm reading this because I think it's kind of cool. But at the same time, I'm not getting my hopes up, and because I have to admit, and I don't want to. You and I talked about it before. Brave and the Bold was beautiful for DC.
Yeah.
What Liam Sharpe did, but narratively that had some sort of
The
like that
story had some
had
problems.
some problems. But because he's bitten off a lot here, but I
Mhm.
will give him one credit. He's planting more seeds here already than he did when Brave and the Bold.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's what I like. So that leads me to believe that I think we're more likely than not to get some payoff here. And this is only book one. This is only book one, which implies I'm assuming if you're going to call something book one, you arrogantly yet confidently believe you're going to get
Yes.
a book two and three. So my fingers are crossed. So I, again, I do think that there's some. I would rearrange the pages of this book of this particular issue, but
Mhm.
there is a good story here. But let's face it, if you're albeit if you're in a basement and you got a sewage leak, you'd
Yeah.
probably be forgiven for
And
falling
you
asleep
have
at page
really
14.
bad attention span, and it really takes a lot out of you, I'm telling you. The thing is, and again, here's my compliment to it. You end up having a book that is 23 pages or whatever, you're getting your money's worth. This is dense as hell. I mean, it is so you have to read it more than once, so you're gonna get your bang for your buck, and if you like it, I mean, you probably love it. I mean, like, through the roof, the idea of how dense it is. I just think in my mind of just reading comics and whatnot, and again, my sensibilities, I'm not a real dark comic, even dark fantasy type this. At one point I was, but I've kind of gotten past that now. And so it's not exactly, my cup of tea here, but I still think that maybe he needs a little more editorial guidance in this. I know he's doing it all himself. It's at Image, which, plays off that you have your own properties and things like that. But I really think that a little tightening up and a little bit of something with, hey, wouldn't the story be better this way? Or let me tell you, this would be better on this page and that there. I think it could really make it something even bigger and better than it was, because right now I still think that at points, like I said, it feels like you're trying to wade through things to try to get to the heart of it when I wish it was a lit, but I guess that's part of the fun of it if you enjoy it. You like the layers and you like the density of it. But once it started kind of breaking the fourth wall about comic making and things like that, kind of threw me off a little with that as well. But overall, I'm still intrigued enough by the story. Again, though, I ended up where I finished it, but I could barely understand what he was trying to get at points, but again, it was just that's me. That's me being a dummy and reading it, but the art is really good. I'm not even gonna give it a score. I'm gonna allow you to score it because of the idea. But again, when I'm going through it here as well, when you get to the end and when you do get to the points that we like last issue, it hits hard then. Again, you're like, "Okay, that's cool." And like you said, thinking of who these kids might be. What did they go with this? And the parents being killed, was that something that, because they say died horrifically, but they still can't explain it. Something's up with that. And so I'd like to see, more of that. But really from the first issue, that intrigue of, we thought was really clever about this AI future alien species who went back to pretty much erase magic, but the Ur Queen had been able to make a pocket dimension to keep that and not get her mind wiped and remember it to send her son Merlin back. That was pretty damn good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like to
no, it is.
start
Yeah.
it off. I mean, that was great. And then when you get to this, it stepped back a little in my mind to do some of those things. And again, Liam Sharpe is an incredible artist. Maybe that's the other thing. Maybe he's got to die. I know he wants to impress everybody with everything, and he does, but maybe you got to tighten it up a little. Is just my deal. But anything else that you want to say about
Just
it?
yeah, well, just in particular, there's no less than, and I'm not an artist here, and
Yeah, I'm not either.
yeah, I know you aren't either, but you don't have to be to know that there are four very distinctive artistic styles in
Yeah.
this issue alone, and it's almost like, and it's amazing that they're all from the same artist, but I
Oh yeah.
question whether or not it was. It's absolutely necessary because
Necessary or
normally,
needed.
here's the irony: most of the time, we're normally critical of a comic that has too many
Yeah.
artistic styles in it. Yet here we got the same artist with four distinctive
It
artistic
is funny, and
approaches.
that's when people praise that then, even though it has the same problem. It really does, you're right. It's
Yeah.
funny because when you go through it, there is a thing, and it's such a soft spot for me as a kid, and I told you before we started, when you go through, all of a sudden you hit an area that looks like the Gnomes books that they came out in, like, the '80s. They were, like, illustrated, almost like textbooks that were, "Here's gnomes," like they were real, and you even get that in there, and I'm like, that's something that it really makes me smile seeing that, but in this, I don't know that you need it. You're right, it's weird.
Yeah.
I didn't even think
But
about the way
but
you're saying that. It
well,
is odd.
yeah, and the thing is, it's even fine, but I think I can't underscore enough how important it will be. I have a sneaking suspicion I'll probably want to buy. I mean, I hope I'm
This
not
in
wrong on this, but
trade
I
or
hope when this will read much better as a trade
yeah,
because you really do need to read. You know, I mean, having a month break in between these
it's
issues
tough.
on a story that is kind of complex like this, and when especially when you read as many comics as I know you and I, and you read even
Yeah.
more. I mean, it's a little bit jarring, but still, I gotta give compliments here. This is exactly what I always want in a comic because you can get lost in this universe and you can reread it, and you're rewarded because this does make sense upon multiple readings. And the questions I'm asking, at least so far, I think are the questions. I mean, you want to be intrigued. Like honestly, I have no idea what the hell this troll is on this page, and with the chicken, and I don't know
Yeah.
what the hell this is. But on the final page, we got the look of the alien, and we knew from last issue that the alien, this cast group of aliens, they wear the masks of humans, so they actually wear human. They actually wear our skin as their masks, and this alien is clearly standing in front of what appears to be Merlin himself, I think.
Mhm.
And so, are they in fifth century England? Is this in the future? Like, there's so much. Whenever he gets on his painted style, and there's always he's always a question mark for me, Liam Sharpe, but he does, you know, he does have a game plan. I know with his Brave and the Bold, I found that he got a little bit too wordy and
Yeah.
he went off on tangents that were a little bit too much. I actually think he's done a better job here, being a little bit more conservative with his exposition. Uh, but having said that, trying to break the fourth wall, I thought was, you know, I think that's a little bit iffy, but you know, again, I what I love about it is he's thinking outside the box. He's thinking big. He's going
Yeah.
for it. He's passionate. He said it in the interview. He's passionate about this. He's been passionate about this project, and you can tell he's going for it. He's not pulling any punches. He's not. And I give him credit for that. And I'm going to reward him. I'm picking up this series. I think it's a visual feast, and I'm certainly going to be in this for at least book one for sure.
Mhm.
So we'll see where it goes. But
Yeah.
in terms of my grade, I gotta go down. I'm gonna go down a half a point, and I'm gonna say half a point. I don't even know. I can't remember what I gave the first
Yeah.
one. I'm sure I gave the first one a 9. I'll go down to an 8.5 because
Yeah, I think we
I
both
still
gave it
really
9.
enjoy this. You know, go ahead.
And I wish again, I tried and then we had to record and whatnot. I'll give it a shot because as we were going through, I'm paging it through again, and it's when I could even see when it just hit me was when we did get to it just starting to be very much like a history lesson and things like that. And then from there, jumping to the troll, the chicken, and then what the
Yeah,
heck?
I
And it
know.
is, and you said, like you said, that people would then say if this was multiple artists, oh, there was a jarring change and all of this. And it is told a bit disjointed. Like you said, you'll jump in and out of scenes to continue and things like that. But even with that, I am intrigued with what is going on. Like, I want more of Daryl. And I want more of, some of that stuff then, and maybe we'll get that. Maybe setting up the story with this history lesson and going old English and old Britain and stuff like that going, because that seems that what he is definitely interested in. And he's using that as the basis of this and going, and playing off the idea that actually the King Arthur myth will end up being this ancient or
Mhm.
actually in the future deal of this thing battling the air. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I
I'll go with you with the score just because I said I'm not going to score it, but I think that you're right on
And
with
I want to
it.
add one thing that, you know, especially since you know, I review a lot of DC, you certainly do, and Marvel and everything else.
Mhm.
But, you know, I bitch, whine, and complain about DC continuity and Marvel continuity and all this other jazz. And the fact of the matter is that these types of comics that Liam Sharp is doing here, these are gems. These are
Yeah,
guys that are putting their heart and soul in their own universe continuity, and and the detail is incredible. In terms of their story, the universe, and they're cramming a lot of information. And when I think of the amount of time and effort that I'll put into multiple DC books, I really do. I really ought to give independent writers more
yeah.
slack, quite
Well,
frankly.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
one of the reasons why I'm so glad I'm doing, frankly, why I am so glad that we're doing this collaboration reviewing these comics, independent
Yeah.
comics, because frankly, they deserve more love. And this is a prime example of the type of comic book and a universe that I'd like to get lost in.
Yeah, and I'll give you a bit more of that. The idea that you have Liam Sharp doing this, you can feel and tell. You said the passion of this. This is a passion project. He's doing it. You can feel the love. You can feel the care. And I think that one of the things that DC has had problems with that I said over and over, you don't get that from many, if any, of the comics, and it's because most of those are assigned, and most obviously they're not
Yeah,
their own characters.
yeah.
Also, so but also that fact that it seems like DC assigns books, you're not gonna get a passion. If you want a Wonder Woman book, because me and you both love Wonder Woman, and it's driving us nuts
Yeah.
when we're reading the current Wonder Woman stuff, because it just doesn't feel
Would
like
you like a
it.
glass of milk?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, my big joke was, I guess what you're saying is you'd rather have these troll and chicken things than being told nothing about what this milk might or might not be, and it seems very sus. I mean, yeah, there's the difference between a story that is involved in a future war between an AI type alien race, and you end up having to bring back magic via the King Arthur legend, versus, "Hey, you wanna drink some milk, you soy boy?" I
And
mean,
if you don't
really?
like it, I'm
Like,
gonna jizz milk all over your
oh
face.
my, I mean, here's the thing, I don't know, we did our podcast, the DC
Yeah.
podcast last night, and Eric isn't as much of a prude as me. I am a prude, I will admit it. When I'm reading things, I do end up a lot of times thinking, like, of who else might be reading it and things like that. Like, I like wholesome stuff as well, even if I'm not as wholesome myself, but when that point this week where Wonder Woman basically looks like she has jizz on her face, Eric flipped out. He was like, "Who let this go through? This is Wonder Woman, and you're letting this nonsense go through.
I
Seriously."
know.
Like, he just kept yelling, like, "Who let this go through? Who saw this and said, 'Okay'?" Oh, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous it is. But yeah, oh my God. Yeah, some of these books. And again, we say that, and there's a lot of books now. DC actually has more books right now that I'm enjoying than I have in, say, the past 2 years. But there's also those ones that are just dead awful. It's like that. There's not a ton in between, and even Marvel itself. Marvel as well. And that's why I do like the manga, but I do like the indie stuff as well. And I'm glad that we ended up talking, because again, I never would have read any of these books if we weren't talking about them. I'll admit it. We do too many other things and whatnot. And then even then, if I read it, I'd probably fall off it, or just think to myself, that's why I like talking. I said it last episode. I like talking with you about it, because then, once you verbalize things and hear the other guy going, it gets you all excited and whatnot.
Yeah,
And you even have
does.
me picked up of, all right, I'm gonna have to read through this again. I'm gonna have to start. Again, like I said, I kind of got to the one part, and I'm, well, we got to go, and so I didn't feel right, even though I still talked a bunch about. But it just it threw me off, and I think that maybe like you're saying, that we should give the indie stuff a little bit of a credit. I think maybe I have to give Liam Sharp a little bit more too, because I ended up unfortunately thought, oh, here he goes again, because of that Brave and the Bold Wonder Woman and Batman book. But I do like his art a lot, so it's just, maybe he could have dialed it back a little with these changing styles, or maybe done something where you have more of an issue with one of the parts of the story, and maybe mix it in that way later. But we'll see. We'll see. And we'll be doing number three, I'm sure, because you at least really are enjoying. And I like all three of these. Of the three, Absolution is probably like the third book on there, but I'm still interested. But boy, after talking about it, I'm actually really excited about There's Something Wrong with Patrick Todd. And I don't hear anybody talking about that book at all. I've not heard anybody mention it once. So hopefully
Yeah,
people get on board. But other than that, yeah, that's about it, right? I think we
yeah.
are done. I'm telling you, this basement stinks so bad. But once I'm down, like now, I worry, because I'm like, yeah, it doesn't smell so bad down here now. And then I'll go upstairs like, oh my God, fresh air. But with that, as we end up saying at the end, if you like what you hear, and just as an aside, like you mentioned the YouTube deal, I am going to be putting this up on its own feed. It's going to have its own podcast feed, so we'll have that out there as well. So if you are listening to the podcast side of things, it'd be great if you'd rate and review the stuff, and then maybe eventually we'll even have some mail or something, going along with it. That's up to you, Rocky, as we go forward. But yeah, for my side of things, just check out the show notes, all the stuff, Weird Science, independents, DC Comics, Marvel, Manga. We have a bunch of things. As we get more and more into this, we'll probably spell out some more things. But Rocky, you give your stuff now.
Yeah. We also on my channel usually every Monday, late Monday evening. I do DC Comics review with
Hmm.
Francesa, the Comic Source podcast, and yeah, and then I do. That's pretty much all I do. Occasionally I'll do a rant and rave video, but then I'm doing this with you every week, and
Yeah.
I always say, I think you joked one time, you listen to me at the end of the week. I always listen to you guys at the end of the week. In terms
Hmm.
of I love listening to your podcast, because I always like, figuring out what I missed
Yeah.
in every DC comic. Because my God, when there's 13, 14, 15 DC comics to read, that's
I know.
it's quite challenging. It really, really is. But I have to admit, I mean, full disclosure, I'm much more enjoying the content of the indie comics that I'm
Yeah.
reading, and I find it actually a little bit more easy to remember, probably because the topics are a little bit more interesting. But no,
And they're
it's
also unique to each show, each book.
yeah.
You're not like, what did Batman do in that book? Or, they're actually pretty unique because it's their own thing.
Well, yeah, it's kind of refreshing to. I mean, if I have, I mean, sometimes, especially with long time characters, you get tied up with,
Yeah.
how they're acting out of character, or we're criticizing this or criticizing that, because all
Hmm.
of us presume to know the characters. It's kind of nice to go into something brand new where we got no preconceptions, no nothing, and just let the author. Literally, the author is the one taking us for the ride, and
Yeah.
what is, and we have no basis upon which to question it, and so everything is a genuine surprise. Like, in particular, there's something wrong with Jason Todd. I mean, I
Yeah.
gotta admit, the decapitation at the end of issue 1 was a surprise.
Yes. Even that, like, say Absolution. We're reading this, and next week I read it first and I get hold of you, and I'm like, holy crap, that Nina, they killed her off.
Yeah,
This isn't even about her. That could happen.
yeah,
But if I say to you, oh my God, Rocky, do you see that new Batman? I think
yeah,
Batman's dead. You're like, really? Are
yeah,
you that dumb? Like, seriously?
yeah,
So, yeah, you have that surprise. That's why I like the mysteries more in this sort of deal with the independent things, because you never know. Again, that's kind of like what happens in manga as well. There's times where you actually think that you're following the main character, and then 6 chapters in, oh crap, that wasn't the main character, that person just died, and it's always keeps you on your toes. So I do like that.
yeah, yeah. I just kissed my daughter goodnight.
All right.
So I
Yes,
mean, that's so timing's perfect.
that is timing's perfect. I don't even think my 2 youngest sons that still live at the house, they ended up going, and each Sunday they go to our oldest son. They go to his house and watch movies and things like that, and I don't think they're back yet, because if they were, you would have heard them, and I did not hear them. So I'll have to go and see what's up with that, because they should have been home by now, is what I'm saying, but they aren't. So I'll have to figure it
Well,
out.
you got 5, right?
Yeah, I have 5
5.
kids, 5
My
boys. Yeah,
wow.
yeah, it's
I don't
crazy.
know, and you have time. You have time to read comics. Wow.
Nah, because they ignore me, is what happens. I mean, now they're all getting older, and they are either in that older teenage stage, my 2 youngest being 16 and 19, they end up where they don't want any parts of me and my wife now. She's all upset about it. I'm like, "Finally, I can relax." And so it does get sad a little bit, but, even though me and my 19-year-old, we went and played golf this week. We had some fun. We're both terrible, but yeah, my 2 oldest, they end up, we barely see them really. And then my third, the middle child, he moved to New Jersey, so it's hard to even see
Uh,
him. So they kind of all ditched us, but eventually they'll
uh,
come back. Tanya's just mad. We have 5 boys, and not one chance, it seems, of a grandkid or anything. And she's getting like, this is the worst. None of them might have kids. I'm like, I don't care. That's fine with me. I don't need that, but that's that. But yeah, a lot of kids, a lot of kids. And now it's funny. They just got home. I just heard slamming doors. You'll probably hear them yelling in a minute. But with all of that, I guess that's it then.
good time to end it then, I guess.
Yes, it is. So the cue to go. But thanks for doing this with me, Rocky, as always.
You betcha.
And yeah, everybody check out everything if you're watching this on the YouTube channels or the podcast, whatever. Check out the show notes
Yeah.
with all
Shout out
those
to the Get
things.
Fresh crew at Weird Science too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody. All right. But that, I guess, is it.
All right. Catch you later.